So for eastern Scotland, northern England. A few fog patches first thing, particularly around southern and southwestern parts of England, East Wales into East Anglia. They'll continue into mid-morning in some spots, but then they'll lift to brighter skies. But cloud is filtering in from the northwest, and that cloud will bring some spots of drizzle over western hills and coasts, and more persistent rain in the far north and northwest. A milder day to come in the north, but a slightly colder day to come further south. And that cloud becomes more extensive into Friday evening. The winds pick up in the far north once again, and the rain turns heavy, especially for the northwest highlands, where as much as 60 to 80 millimetres is expected by the end of Friday. A windy period then for the weekend, especially in the north, with the risk of gales and further rain at times drier further south.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Westminster is still waiting with bated breath for the Sue Gray report, but there's lots going on. It's Holocaust Memorial Day, of course, and we're also looking at the rising problem of spiking on nights out. I have an exclusive interview with Labour MP Lloyd Russell-Moyle about living with HIV, and we're also discussing women's football. But first, here's your news. Good afternoon, it's 12 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright here in the GB News newsroom. Prince Andrew says he wants to appear before a jury to contest the sexual abuse claims made by Virginia Giuffre. She's suing the Duke of York in a civil case in the States. He has repeatedly denied all of the allegations. We can find out more and speak to our Home and Security Affairs editor, Mark White, who's live now at Windsor Castle. Mark, it does seem like Prince Andrew is just determined to fight this in court.
Yeah, this is a real message of intent from Prince Andrew and his legal team, a determination, it seems, to fight the allegations made by Virginia Giuffre in that legal lawsuit, the claims that Prince Andrew forced her to have sex with him some 2 decades ago when she was underage. That is something that Prince Andrew has always vehemently denied. Now, the last thing, of course, that the royal family in this Jubilee year want is the distraction of a trial in the United States with all the press publicity that will bring. But there is a lot at stake here for Prince Andrew, a chance, of course, to clear his name and potentially to return to some form of life with the royal family. That case is due to get underway in the States in September.
Mark, thank you. Live for us there at Windsor Castle. Now, the highly anticipated report into alleged lockdown parties at Downing Street is said to have been delayed by last-minute legal checks. Senior civil servant Sue Gray's findings were expected to be published as early as yesterday, but Westminster officials now believe it may not happen until next week. Labour is calling for the report to be published in full, following suggestions by cabinet ministers that some sections may be redacted for security reasons. Well, Leeds North East MP Fabian Hamilton told GB News Partygate means the Prime Minister should go.
My constituents, like every other MP's constituents, are sick to the back teeth of this whole Partygate nonsense. They want a resolution, and they want the man that has been at the back of this and the front of this to pack it in, frankly, because if he sets the rules for all of us and then he breaks them willingly and knowingly, which he clearly has, and then lies to the House of Commons about it, which is against all the rules in the book, then he should resign straight away. I'm sorry.
The Defence Secretary says he's not optimistic a Russian invasion in Ukraine can be stopped. Moscow, which has amassed around 100,000 troops on the border, is strengthening its military presence, sending more vehicles to the Rostov region for drills. The US has now formally rejected Russia's demand to ban Ukraine from NATO, repeating its commitment to an open-door membership policy. Former NATO Deputy Supreme Allied Commander General Sir Richard SHIRREFF told GB News Putin is holding a gun to NATO's head.
Again and again, history tells us that the way to prevent wars is through deterrence and a removal of any hint of miscalculation by being determined, demonstrating a determination to be ready to defend ourselves. This is absolutely being ready to use force, of course, but it's being ready to use force in order to preserve peace. Peace is precious and we need to be very ready to defend it.
From Monday in England, there'll be no limit on the number of visitors that care home residents can receive. The Department of Health also announced changes to COVID testing for care home workers. Weekly PCR tests will be replaced by pre-shift lateral flows from the 16th of February. Plan B measures have now been scrapped in England, bringing a number of coronavirus rules to an end. Face masks are no longer required, but some retailers like Sainsbury's, as well as some transport operators, are asking people to continue to wear them. The legal requirement for NHS COVID passes to enter venues like nightclubs has also been dropped. A ceremony to mark International Holocaust Remembrance Day has been held at the Bundestag in Germany. The German Chancellor, the German President and Israel's President laid a wreath at the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe. The ceremony remembers the millions of people who were killed by the Nazi regime. Chief Executive of the Holocaust Educational Trust, Karen Pollock, told GB News it was a defining period in human history.
It may be disturbing for viewers to think about the fact that 6 million individuals, they were taken away from their homes, put in ghettos, some sent into the forests and shot and thrown into a ditch, some deported to concentration camps and death camps, straight to the gas chamber. It is unimaginable. It's very difficult for us to get our heads around.
You are up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now back to the briefing with Gloria.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing. It was going to be published imminently, then it wasn't. Now it's with the lawyers. Yes, of course, I'm talking about that Sue Gray report. I have the latest from our political editor about what on earth is going on. Someone spiking your drink used to be a rare event, but not anymore. Now spiking through injections is also on the rise. I'm talking to Richard Graham MP about his proposal to make it a criminal offence. It's Holocaust Memorial Day today. I'll be talking to Charlotte Nichols MP about why we must never forget the atrocities which happened. She's opening today's parliamentary debate. I have an exclusive interview with Labour MP Lloyd Russell-Moyle, the first MP to announce he was HIV positive in the House of Commons chamber. And we'll be talking about women's football too. Westminster is in limbo, waiting for Sue Gray's report into Downing Street parties to be published. Speculation is at fever pitch, but there's been so many alleged parties, it's hard to keep track. So let's take a look back at some of the most damaging party claims and how they've been reported in the papers. The Guardian published a photo of multiple Downing Street staff, including the Prime Minister and his now wife, appearing to socialise with wine in May 2020. 5 days later, the infamous Bring Your Own Bottle party. Over 100 staff were allegedly invited and the Prime Minister was there for nearly half an hour. Carrie Johnson was pictured with a friend in September 2020, days before Mr Johnson had told the public to keep their distance from those they don't live with. Then the Christmas parties. First, the Prime Minister was revealed to have hosted a quiz while seated with colleagues, clearly in a festive mood. Then, as revealed by ITV, Number 10 staff were caught on camera joking about a Christmas party attended by around 40 people. Perhaps most damning, the evening before Prince Philip's funeral last year, when the Queen sat alone to mourn, 2 raucous parties were held inside Number 10. Our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is at Downing Street. Darren, good to see you. What's causing the hold-up in the publication of this report?
Well, it seems like, Gloria, the lawyers, trade unions, staff reps have all got involved, maybe even the police as well. Now, why is that? Well, for 2 reasons. First of all, of course, there is another investigation underway by the Metropolitan Police, and they seem determined that Sue Gray's potentially will not prejudice theirs, particularly if the police find that some criminal activity is taking place inside Number 10. And in addition to that, we're expecting Sue Gray certainly to have a look at the culture inside Number 10, but maybe look at some specific individuals as well who may well get named, and that means that, as I say, trade union reps, lawyers may well get involved, because clearly these issues sometimes in any other profession will be kept kind of relatively quiet or private. This clearly will be for everyone to read. So at the moment, we know Sue Gray has essentially concluded her report. She wants it to be published in full, but in essence she's having to take in all these other recommendations about what she can and cannot include, and that seems to be at the moment why it's been delayed. We were expecting it yesterday. There was much speculation it could be even today. I think that's looking now increasingly very unlikely, given the fact the Prime Minister isn't even in London this afternoon, and it really could seep into next week. Maybe we might get it on Monday, but in all honesty, no one knows. I don't know. No one really knows.
And Conservative MPs, many of them have said that they are waiting for its publication. How might they act when it is published?
Well, lots of speculation was known in today's papers that MPs may be prepared to put their names into the 1922 committee, Gloria, if Sue Gray's report is pretty damaging for the Prime Minister. And I think that is the big question that in the end will decide things, is just how difficult this is for the Prime Minister. Now, it is entirely possible that because of this Met investigation, actually some of the more substantial claims about parties, some of the more damaging ones, will not be included because they are being investigated by the Met, and that means that Sue Gray's report might not be as damaging for the Prime Minister as some may have initially thought, and that might mean that MPs, some of them, will not put the letters in, that they will hold off again for the Met to report back, or indeed potentially until after the local elections in May. So at the moment it seems like the Prime Minister has bought himself a little bit more time, but these are the things that Conservative MPs are having to weigh up. You know, do they want to do this? Depends on what Sue Gray says. What do the constituents think? What are the loyalty to the Conservative Party and Boris Johnson? And all this, of course, while the Prime Minister himself is frantically calling around and meeting with as many MPs as he possibly can to try and convince them that he's contrite, that things will change inside Number 10, that people will go, they will be sacked if they're found to have broken any rules or participated in the breaking of rules, and that they will get back to a more conservative policy agenda if he's allowed to stay inside Number 10. So an awful lot of pressure, it must be said, on Tory MPs having to weigh up all these factors.
And finally, Darren, there's also a row about stray cats and dogs being airlifted out of Afghanistan. Tell us about that.
Yeah, indeed, this all relates back to last summer. Another headache for the Prime Minister. Frankly, the last thing he needs. Now, at the time, you may remember there was this big controversy about Penfarthing. He was an animal rights campaigner who had, I think, 150 stray cats and dogs in an animal sanctuary in Kabul that he wanted to be rescued. Many people were suggesting at the time, given Kabul was collapsing and frantically, lots of people were trying to get out, that people should be given priorities over animals. In the end, Penfarthing did manage to get his own jet and was given clearance by the Ministry of Defence to fly those animals, not his staff, it was said, but his animals out of Afghanistan back to London. Now, there was some speculation at the time that the Prime Minister may have got personally involved in all of this, that he may well have lobbied for that flight to take off. It is something he has repeatedly said is utter nonsense. Downing Street have also denied it. But yesterday we got a leaked email given to the Foreign Affairs Committee that's been investigating all of this from officials inside the Foreign Office who indeed suggested the Prime Minister had intervened. They put that down in a writing, in email to the Foreign Office Minister, Zach Goldsmith, which seems entirely to contradict what the Prime Minister has said. I say this, the Prime Minister's denied it, Downing Street's denying it, Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, is denying it, and so is Penfarthing. But I think in the end, it's going to come down to this question of trust, whether people do believe that the Prime Minister didn't intervene despite that letter, or whether in the end they think this is another bit of information that means the Prime Minister should be properly questioned.
Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, as ever, thank you. Now, spiking is a rising problem as more and more people say they have been spiked on a night out, either through their drink or an injection. It's a real worry for many young people. Richard Graham, Conservative MP for Gloucester, has put proposals before Parliament calling for spiking to be made a specific criminal offence. And I'm delighted that he joins me now. Richard, it is good to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gloria. Good to see you again.
Just forgive me if I just ask one question on Partygate. You're on the record as having said, I quote, "We should await both the findings of the report by senior civil servant Sue Gray and see what changes are made to how Number 10 operates thereafter." Is there anything Sue Gray could say that would make you submit a letter of no confidence to the Prime Minister?
Well, look, I mean, letters of no confidence are for individuals to work out. I wouldn't go public on whether I had or hadn't. But I am really here to talk about my bill of yesterday, spiking, which I think is of more interest to many of my young constituents than birthday Partygate.
Just tell us about what spiking is. How do you define it? How would you define it in law?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because, you know, spiking in terms of drinks has been going on for quite a while and we know about it, but the new form of spiking is spiking by injection. And we still don't know nearly enough about this because it hasn't yet been proven that toxic substances have been found in anyone's arms or thighs yet. But yet increasing numbers of young people are pretty sure that they've been spiked. And the police are reporting anecdotally quite a lot more instances of this. So we've got these two different types of spiking. And the law at the moment means that if it's spiking with sexual gratification as the aim, then there's a law to deal with that. And if you take in noxious substances, then there's an old law of 1861 to deal with that. But a spiking bill would make spiking or an intent to spike an offence in its own right. And I think that is the key thing that many young people and their parents across the country really want to see. They're probably a bit puzzled that spiking isn't an offence in itself already.
And you were inspired to try to change the law after a mother in your constituency spoke to you about what happened to her daughter. Just tell us about that case.
That's absolutely right. So Rosie Farmer, who I've known for a long time, wrote me quite a long, detailed email about what had happened to her daughter, Maisie, who's studying criminology and policing at the University of Worcester. And, you know, Maisie was absolutely clear that she had been injected. There was a clear mark on her arm. But by the time she got to hospital and this was looked at, there was no evidence of any chemical there. So what they were both really saying was, what are we going to do about this? Because there are a lot of young people, particularly women, though there are some men who've been affected as well, who are getting spiked. And this is causing a huge amount of stress and anxiety, totally understandably. So I think there are some things that can be done locally, and then I think there are some things that need to be done nationally. The government is looking at this. They've got a gold command in the police constabularies. There's a Home Office Select Committee who are looking at the whole issue. And I think we can move forward with quite a lot of consensus on the idea that spiking should be a crime.
How does somebody know if they have been spiked? How can you tell? When should you seek to get clarification? Who do you go to?
I mean, that is a really good point. I heard from one of my colleagues the sad story of how her daughter thought she'd been spiked in a nightclub, and she, more or less passed out and was effectively carried out by a bouncer and sort of dumped on the pavement. That's totally unacceptable. And what we've done in my constituency, Gloucester, for example, is that the nightclubs, the Licensed Victuallers Association, have teamed up to take on paramedics. They call them the street medics, who are there to help anyone in that situation. And they've also got some testing kits which are available in the nightclub to individuals or to the managers of the nightclub, so that if somebody thinks they have been spiked, they can get an instant test. So there are things you can do to reach for help. And I think local councils up and down the country will be looking at increased ways of making sure that their customers and my constituents, in the case of Gloucester, are going to be safe.
How widespread do you think the problem is? How frequent is it?
Well, that is a good question, precisely because spiking isn't a crime in itself, police don't have any data on this, and it's not yet mandatory for hospitals to report suspected spikings to the police. So it's all a bit anecdotal, but I think around the country there's a figure of 2,500 cases over the last few years. In Gloucestershire, it's risen from sort of a dozen cases a month to 50 cases in the autumn of last year, and then come down a bit since. So this is becoming a big issue, and I think there are dozens and dozens of people who've been spiked who haven't reported. And then, of course, we know from the sad case of Mr. Sinaga in Manchester, who sexually assaulted 48 men without most of them even knowing about it, having spiked them, that there will be lots of other incidents unrecorded as well.
Are there warning signs that we can look out for? Of course, we shouldn't have to worry about going on a night out. The only thing we should be thinking about is enjoying ourselves. But how do we best protect ourselves on a night out?
I think spiking is really difficult in that sense. There's a bit of a debate about how you spike someone with an injection. Some people argue that you'd have to use a needle that's quite long, and therefore it would be very hard for that to be done invisibly, and it would be captured on CCTV. Other people point to the little needles that are given to you if you get coronavirus, which are very small. They can be sort of worn on a thumb, and it's a quick jab in and out. So there are different views on this, which is why the police and the Select Committee got to do more research. But I think the one thing you can try and do if you're going out with a group of friends is for someone to keep a very close eye on the drinks, because it's when you're away from the table and dancing that maybe somebody chooses to spike a drink.
Richard Graham, Conservative MP for Gloucester, thanks very much for explaining your proposals. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can't be it if you can't see it. We're talking women's football next, and why seeing women play has such a positive effect. Before that, let's take a look at the weather.
Hello again. Once the last of the cloud and drizzle clears the south, it's a brighter day for many with some sunshine, but there will be further blustery showers across northern parts of the country, especially northern Scotland. Low pressure is departing into Scandinavia. High pressure is starting to move away from the UK, and this trailing cold front is bringing an area of cloud and some outbreaks of generally light rain and drizzle, mostly for Devon and Cornwall, and for parts of Cornwall that sticks around until the end of the afternoon. But brighter skies follow for the rest of the country with some sunny spells. 1 or 2 showers for northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, but the bulk of the showers will be across central and northern Scotland, where it will continue to be windy, and those showers will be accompanied by cold air, so the risk of sleet, snow and hail for Shetland and for the hills of northern Scotland. But the showers in most places ease through the evening. 1 or 2 continue for the Northern Isles. Otherwise, it's a dry with clear skies kind of night, and with winds dropping away. Well, temperatures will also fall, and a frost is expected in many parts. In some sheltered spots, -3 or -4 Celsius for central and southern UK, a touch of frost also for eastern Scotland, northern England. A few fog patches first thing, particularly around southern and southwestern parts of England, East Wales into East Anglia. They'll continue into mid-morning in some spots, but then they'll lift to brighter skies. But cloud is filtering in from the northwest, and that cloud will bring some spots of drizzle over western hills and coasts and more persistent rain in the far north and northwest. A milder day to come in the north, but a slightly colder day to come further south. And that cloud becomes more extensive into Friday evening. The winds pick up in the far north once again, and the rain turns heavy, especially for the northwest highlands, where as much as 60 to 80 millimetres is expected by the end of Friday. A windy period then for the weekend, especially in the north, with the risk of gales and further rain at times drier further south.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Now, women's football has grown massively in recent years. Visibility matters, and seeing women play sport on TV makes a difference. Labour MP Julie Elliott led a parliamentary debate on women in football yesterday, and Julie joins me now. Good to see you, Julie.
Yeah, good to see you as well, Gloria.
When we think of men's professional football, we think of massive salaries and glamorous lifestyles to go with it. How do women professional footballers' salaries and lifestyles compare?
There is no comparison. Few women who are actually on professional contracts, and if they are, they're very unstable with no longevity. And I quoted some figures yesterday about the difference in average pay of the Coventry women. £308 a week for women on average on professional contract, and significantly more for men, many, many thousands.
And how many women and girls play football?
Oh, now it's grown exponentially. I mean, we're into enormous numbers, and if you go into primary schools, there's probably as many girls playing as boys. Unlike when I was at school and you actually weren't allowed to play football. So it has changed massively. It's now just a sport that young kids play. And as those children grow up into adulthood, I suspect that'll carry on. But women have got to be given the access to be able to play on the grounds, and as much priority as men to be able to play in sports fields, because otherwise the sport then contracts, and we don't want that to happen when we've got to this point.
Now, women have babies. What maternity rights do women professional footballers have?
At the moment, none, really. It's very piecemeal. But what I was happy to say yesterday is that I understand the FA and the PFA have reached agreement on a standardised contract, which will give maternity rights and sick pay, which are two big fundamental things that will transform the women's professional game. But at the moment, it's very ad hoc. and really virtually non-existent, which is not acceptable. If we want the professional women's game to grow, we have to understand that women have babies and have to be given the correct protections and rights.
I'm just quoting some words back at you from your parliamentary speech yesterday. Visibility matters, and seeing women play sport on TV makes a difference. What progress has been made when it comes to that?
Well, the last few years, I mean, the BBC showing women's football at prime time, covering the Lionesses campaign through the last World Cup, and Sky Sports now doing similar things. That has absolutely been a game changer. And you only have to look at the numbers of women playing football, the numbers of people watching the Women's Super League. I think since Sky have started to broadcast the games, I think the surveys have said 9 out of 10 people had never watched it before. So that shows there is an audience there if the games are shown, and it has grown. It will continue to grow the more that it is actually on TV.
And what did you call on the government to do in Parliament yesterday when you led that debate?
Well, one of the significant things that I'm looking for is the government to launch a plan-led review, just like the one that's been done into football in general so well by Tracy Crouch. Number 45 of her recommendations was to have a similar thing done into women's football, because the issues and concerns are different, similar but different, and the sport is at such a different stage in its development. Unfortunately, the Minister wouldn't commit to that, and that's a shame, but I shall keep pressure and I shall keep asking the government to do this, because the recommendations in that report were really important. But for women's football, number 45, having an inquiry and a review into the women's game is absolutely crucial for us getting to the next step.
And finally, Julie, as you mentioned, when we were at school, we didn't play football as girls, but now you say girls do. Are they both, are girls footballers at school given the same, regarded in the same esteem as boy footballers at school?
I genuinely think now young kids, and I know this from my own grandchildren at primary school, if they play football, they play football. If they play basketball, they play basketball. And young children now don't see any difference. They don't see things as boys' games and girls' games. Where it changes is they get more to senior school or into adulthood. That's when it changes. And that's what we've got to make sure doesn't happen, because the talent, the enthusiasm, the wanting to do it is there in young children, and we've got to make sure that as a country and a society we give all of our kids the same opportunities to play the sport they love, whatever that sport is.
Really good to talk to you today, Julie Elliott, Labour MP for Sunderland Central. Thank you. After the break, we have an exclusive interview with Labour MP Lloyd Russell-Moyle, the first MP to announce in the Commons chamber that he is HIV positive. That's after the news with Rosie.
Good afternoon, it's 12:30. I'm Rosie Wright, here to get you up to date at GB News. Prince Andrew's lawyers have accused Virginia Giuffre of wrongful conduct in their latest attempt to dismiss the civil sex abuse case against him. They've submitted 11 reasons why they believe the case should be thrown out. The Duke of York, who's consistently denied the allegations, also wants to appear before a jury to contest the claims. Downing Street says it's still possible that Sue Gray could publish her findings into alleged lockdown parties before the weekend. The highly anticipated report into alleged lockdown rule breaches was expected to be published as early as yesterday. Well, Scotland Yard are investigating some of the events, having received information from the inquiry. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister, though, says Boris Johnson hasn't been interviewed by the police. Russia says tensions with the West over Ukraine are reminiscent of the Cold War. It comes as the US formally rejected Moscow's demand to ban Kiev from NATO. The Kremlin says remarks by the US and NATO do not give much cause for optimism, and it's clear security concerns haven't been considered. From Monday in England, there'll be no limit on the number of visitors to care homes. The Department of Health also announced changes to COVID testing for workers. Weekly PCR tests for those working in care homes are going to be replaced by pre-shift lateral flows. That comes into force on the 16th of February. Plan B measures have been scrapped in England, bringing a number of coronavirus rules to an end. Face masks are no longer required, but some retailers, like Sainsbury's, as well as transport operators, are suggesting people continue to wear them. The legal requirement as well for NHS COVID passes to enter venues like nightclubs in England has also been dropped. Rising energy and food prices contributed to an estimated 2.5 million UK households missing bill payments this month. A survey by the consumer group Which found people struggle to pay at least one mortgage, rent loan or credit card account. You're up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. I'll keep you up to date across the afternoon. A short break now, and then we'll be back to The Briefing with Gloria.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Now it's time for my series of very special interviews with MPs where we go behind the politics and get to know the real person. I spoke to Lloyd Russell-Moyle, Labour MP for Brighton Kemp Town. He became the second MP to announce he was HIV positive. And we both looked back at that emotional speech he gave in the House of Commons. Lloyd Russell-Moyle, tell me about your background. Fairly middle class, but educated at state schools.
Yeah, I mean, local schools. My parents were teachers and engineers, so not wealthy, but comfortable off, you know. Usually former council houses that my parents had bought, or then later on, you know, kind of nice houses with nice gardens, that kind of thing. But local schools always. So the local primary school, which was a mixed kind of primary school, council estate on one side, former council estate on the other, posher housing on, you know, and the same with the secondary school, a good school, and then technical college, and always beyond school, education, but always working. So part-time education. So when I went to university, Bradford University, again, not a bad university, but not the top universities, you know, to call a spade a spade. But took 6 years to do my undergraduate because I worked alongside it, or I took time off to work because I felt, and I still do, that actually that's quite an important part of people's experience, to be able to not just be focusing on one thing, but to be able to be working and doing other things alongside.
Since you mentioned my hometown of Bradford, I have to ask you, have you ever had a better curry anywhere in Britain than in Bradford?
I don't think so. But I'm sure people in Manchester would dispute that, but I'm not going to get into the curry wars. That can be left to the British curry competition.
When did you realise that you were Labour?
Well, the Woodcraft Folk, which was the organisation that I went to as a child and then became the chair of, which is
Just
kind of like an alternative scouting organisation, left-wing, sometimes accused of being a bit hippie, kind of left the Scouts in 1925. So diverged from that, left because they believed in gender equality and pacifism at the time, although the time of history has meant that the Scouts have changed, and so the Woodcraft Folk. But that was always funded by the cooperative. And so as I worked up the Woodcraft Folk ladder, as it were, it was a natural line to join the Cooperative Party. So unlike most politicians that join the Labour Party and then join the Co-op Party out of convenience, I did it the other way around. I joined the Co-op Party because it was the Co-op that funded the Woodcraft Folk. It was the cooperative principles that the Woodcraft Folk operated by, in terms of, kind of, most of our groups were operated above co-op shops, things like this. And so then that was the party that represented you, represented mutualism, represented working together, represented working for betterment of your community. And then I found out that the Co-op Party was linked to the Labour Party. And for
How old are you then at this
Well,
point?
this is probably about 15, 16. And for me, that's a great shock. And I can remember at the time saying, oh, surely it should just be aligned to whatever party is against the Conservatives in an area. Again, remembering I come from a Liberal Conservative area, not a Labour area. So it's only when I moved to Bradford, when I was then 18 or 19, that I really realised how the Cooperative and Labour were hand in glove. And at the time, Bradford Council was run by a coalition of Liberal Conservatives.
When did you realise you were gay?
Oh, probably even younger than I realised. I knew that I liked boys before I knew the term was that it was gay, And I mean, I can remember in primary school, a boy showing me The Sun, kind of page 3 in The Sun, and me thinking, well, I prefer to see your bits than the bits in the paper at the time, kind of. I didn't say that, but I can remember that image of him secretly showing me this thing, and we kind of think, oh, that's not really for me. So I always knew that that's what it was. And then it's a case of when you understand the label, and then when you understand that you are that. So I came out to my friends at secondary school, probably about 14, 15, and I was fairly comfortable about it. It's never been a big struggle. I've probably received more abuse for being ginger than I have for being gay. Now, Lewes is a nice middle-class town next to Brighton, which is quite open. I'm not saying that I haven't had any abuse sometimes, but actually, probably for other attributes of me, I've had more taunting.
Have you got a partner?
I had a partner for about 4 years until recently, and we're at the moment going through a discussion about what the future involves, as you all do.
As we all do. I really wanted to talk to you because you made this extraordinary speech in the House of Commons a couple of years ago. And you are the first member of Parliament to reveal that you are HIV positive in the House of Commons chamber in a parliamentary speech. What made you decide to do that?
Well, there were 3 reasons why I did it. I talk about some of the reasons in the speech. One reason is just a purely personal reason, is that actually keeping things hidden in politics tends to be the road to ruin. And there is always a danger. And Chris Smith, who had been the only ever MP to even talk about his HIV status, he announced it when he knew he was retiring, but also partly announced it because the papers had got hold of the story. And I felt like I wanted to be on the front foot. I wanted that burden off me. I didn't want to be having to look over my shoulder. So that was, and that's semi-selfish, kind of, I just don't want to have to be doing with that grief. The other parts were that I felt that, and we are at a crux point where we could abolish HIV transmissions. And the government, not just because of me, but at that time, my speech added weight to a call that was growing that we should really commit to abolishing HIV transmissions in this country. And to kind of give you a sense of the numbers, just in Brighton, we've had about 20 people newly infected in the last year. but only 3 of them are new transmissions. The rest are all historic people that have lived with it and who didn't know. And out of those 3 that were new transmissions, they got it from people who were historic and didn't know. And so if we treat those people, once you're on treatment, you can't pass it on. And so it means that you stop being able to get new infections, and we could quite realistically, and Brighton's got a high number of HIV diagnoses compared to some other towns the same and cities the same size because of historic reasons in the community. We could really do that. We could really achieve that because those are the principles. If you are on treatment, you're undetectable, and once you're undetectable, you are untransmittable of that virus, and you can go around. Kind of someone could have sex with you, they could exchange blood with you almost, and you would not be able to pass it on to them. And that's quite a miracle. It's a miracle of science compared to where we've got in 30 years. But equally, there's a danger that we dropped at the last hurdle, so we said, oh, well, it's all sorted. We've got the drugs. And you don't quite deal with that final number of people that either are undiagnosed or for whatever reason, mental health drugs have stopped taking their medicine. And then they are a danger to themselves, but also a danger to the community. So how do we support them to make sure that we abolish this disease? And if we achieve that, first of all in Britain and then around the world, it would only be one of a few number of diseases we have managed to eliminate. And it would be the first disease we've managed to eliminate without a vaccine. So there's some really exciting things there. But the problem was, as with all things, government funding was tight. And I felt that we needed a final push to wake ourselves up to the possibility that was slipping through our fingers if we didn't take this moment.
Could you talk us through the moment you were diagnosed?
Oh, well, it was, I knew something was wrong immediately because they ring you up and they don't say, oh, it's all clear or there's no problem.
Was it a routine? Tell me.
It was, in fact, actually, I went in because I had just had a rash. Could have been an eczema rash. I didn't really know what it was. And they said, we'll take some blood tests because it wasn't clearing up with the hydrocortisone you buy over the counter. We'll take some tests. Then they got back to me and said, oh, your results have come back. We need you to come in to speak to you. And so immediately when they say we need you to come in to speak to you, well, there's something wrong here. And immediately you're kind of thinking, what of all the worst case scenarios? So HIV does flash through your mind because I was a sexually active gay man. And at the time, you're talking about huge numbers of infections in London. They've really gone down, but we were talking about 1 in 7 gay men in London were HIV positive at the time. This is 2004, 2005, 2003, that period, if I remember right. I was diagnosed, of course, after I got it. So we're talking about that time period, and so it flashes through your mind, and you go in and you get the result, and you kind of think this is some horrible joke. You wish it was a horrible joke. You kind of are begging for it to be a kind of nightmare that you wake up from, but it's not. And at that time, 1 pill has only just come in. So in most people's minds, it was still a death sentence, or it was still something very tragic. And of course, the doctor said, it's fine, you can have that 1 pill regimen. You could live as normal life as everyone else. I mean, now there's a plethora of drugs that you can, I started on the only one available that was 1 pill, 1 a day to keep you down. And I didn't start on those drugs straight away because the policy at that time was we'll wait for you to get a bit iller. But now the policy is as soon as you're diagnosed, you're treated because, as I said, once you're on treatment, you can't pass it on. So you become actually quite a safe person and the risk is eliminated.
I'm just trying to do the maths. How old were you when you were going through this?
Must have been 19, 20. I was at university. It was my second year at university. So I was in Bradford. It was the Bradford Clinic. And they were very supportive, and my lecturers and tutors were very supportive. And I had to ring my parents, of course. And I remember my dad saying, you stupid bugger. And he said it in a loving but frustrated kind of way. But as he's a man of kind of science and engineering, he went away and then did that research and then was sending me messages saying, oh, well, here's the latest research coming out. You could live as long as, kind of. So there was always different people cope with it in different ways. And so you're not only having to cope with your trauma, you're having to support your friends and family around you. And they're supporting you in this mutual kind of grieving, understanding kind of thing. And hopefully, I like to think I got through it and my family got through it. But time is to tell.
When I was reading your speech, Because you think that all the myths around HIV have basically gone, but I didn't know that through the pills you can't transmit it through sex.
Yeah.
How do we do enough to dispel the myths that even I had before rereading your speech last night?
Well, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because we don't want to go around saying, oh, don't worry about it anymore. You don't need to use any protection. We can just treat it with a pill. But equally, we want to dispel the kind of fear around it so that we say to people, if you do have it, it's not a problem. If you don't want to get it, you can take a pill, like a bit like the morning after pill. And this was the other argument the government was having. They were saying, if you take either the equivalent of what the morning after pill is or the contraceptive pill equivalent of, so PrEP and PEP. PEP is the morning after, PrEP is the pre, that's why it's the pre-pill. You can also eliminate any risks from yourself. And it was about trying to persuade the government to roll that out as well, which we have now got. But there were some arguments at the time in government that if we give it to people, will it make them more promiscuous? Will it make them more liable for other diseases? And those are really difficult debates. Thankfully, we have come now to the debate, which is about what costs the least amount of money and what saves the most amount of lives. Well, it's about providing the medicine when you can. And in a wealthy country like ours, we can.
Fascinating. Thank you for being so open. You have, it was a very brave and moving speech, but there have been other controversies in your politics. I don't think that is controversial. I just thought it was just the most extraordinary speech that I have heard. Grabbing the mace, which is the symbol of royal authority, the mace in the House of Commons chamber.
At the time, I saw red, and I do sometimes see red, and part of the history of Parliament has been when people have seen red, how they protest that is they pick up the mace. They usually give it quickly over to the steward who returns it back, but it is a symbol of protest. It is effectively how our democracy was established. Oliver Cromwell picked up the mace and said, this is a rotten parliament that no longer has the right to govern because it is in the pocket of the king and not the people. Now, I'm not saying that I'm on the level of Oliver Cromwell. He did lots of awful things as well, but he also reformed and created a democracy that we have at the moment. But it has been done by Heseltine when he felt like the votes were rigged at the time, and that was probably true. It's been done by MacDonald when he felt that the votes were being rigged against his. And actually, I'm not even the last person to have done it, so I can't even say I'm the last person to have lifted it. But I think the one thing is key, is that you can do it maybe once in your career, but you can't do it more than that. I probably lost my rag too quickly and did that. Some of the areas, the prorogation of Parliament and all that illegal stuff, I was proved right. Some of the areas, the public proved me wrong because they voted for what they voted for in the end in 2019.
Well, I've really enjoyed our time together. Lloyd Russell-Moyle, thank you for sharing the real you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed that or if you missed the start, there is a slightly longer version of my interview with Lloyd on YouTube. We'll be posting that imminently. Now, a cost of living crisis could be brewing in homes up and down the country, with more than 3/4 of Britons expecting utility bills to increase this year. A new survey of more than 2,000 people highlights a growing anxiety amongst the population about rising prices. The cost of energy is just one of the worries on people's minds. Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis spoke to the people of Derby to find out what's on their minds.
Well, I haven't really noticed much as yet, because I pay everything monthly. So it's still the same price as the month before. So really, I've not really noticed anything.
Well, where cost of living is concerned, obviously the petrol's sort of gone up probably 50% from what it was before. So you obviously keep your eye on stuff like that more than what perhaps you did a few years ago. Where energy and food concerned, you tend to sort of be a bit more looking at prices perhaps than what you did beforehand. Because obviously these things do catch up at the end of the month, when you actually work out what you've actually spent, and you sometimes think, oh blimey, I didn't realise I spent that much. So
all your food's going up, isn't it?
Yeah, that's electric's really bad, really, really bad. Mate, we're struggling with that at the minute, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah, putting a hell of a lot on it, aren't we?
Yeah, look, it's something like £120 a month it's gone up to. It's ridiculous. I don't know how they expect people to survive.
Petrol's going like massively in price. Like last year it was like 99p a litre, and now it's like nearly £1.50. It's just ridiculous. I feel like petrol's just not lasting as longer either. I feel like I'm like putting petrol in every like week. It's a nightmare.
Well, I've just moved to uni in Derby, and I've got £5,000 per year. It's the first time I've started having to do my own food shop, and I'm realising that it's not really enough to cover it. So I've got a job on the side, but I'm still just about scraping along, to be honest.
Your views on the politics of the day now. Robert sent us an email. My daughter suffered spiking a couple of years ago and managed to get into a cab and get home. She was very scared. David, also on spiking, the problem that we wait until the offence has been done. Victims have suffered and it's all too late. Tony says women's football is here and still not given the recognition it deserves. Peter says, actually, the British public are annoyed but are behind Boris. But Ken has a different view. He says, as a lifelong Conservative voter, if Boris remains Prime Minister, we will not vote as he is damaging the party. You have been watching The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. The show is back every weekday from noon, but on Wednesdays we are on air from 11:50. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan. But for now, it is time for your weather.
Hello again. Once the last of the cloud and drizzle clears the south, it's a brighter day for many with some sunshine, but there will be further blustery showers across northern parts of the country, especially northern Scotland. Low pressure is departing into Scandinavia. High pressure is starting to move away from the UK, and this trailing cold front is bringing an area of cloud and some outbreaks of generally light rain and drizzle, mostly for Devon and Cornwall, and for parts of Cornwall that sticks around until the end of the afternoon. But brighter skies follow for the rest of the country with some sunny spells. 1 or 2 showers for northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, but the bulk of the showers will be across central and northern Scotland, where it will continue to be windy, and those showers will be accompanied by cold air, so the risk of sleet, snow and hail for Shetland and for the hills of northern Scotland. But the showers in most places ease through the evening. 1 or 2 continue for the Northern Isles. Otherwise, it's a dry with clear skies kind of night, and with winds dropping away. Well, temperatures will also fall, and a frost is expected in many parts. In some sheltered spots, -3 or -4 Celsius for central and southern UK, a touch of frost also for eastern Scotland, northern England. A few fog patches first thing, particularly around southern and southwestern parts of England, East Wales into East Anglia. They'll continue into mid-morning in some spots, but then they'll lift to brighter skies. But cloud is filtering in from the northwest, and that cloud will bring some spots of drizzle over western hills and coasts, and more persistent rain in the far north and northwest. A milder day to come in the north, but a slightly colder day to come further south. And that cloud becomes more extensive into Friday evening. The winds pick up in the far north once again, and the rain turns heavy, especially for the northwest highlands, where as much as 60 to 80 millimetres is expected by the end of Friday. A windy period then for the weekend, especially in the north, with the risk of gales and further rain at times drier further south.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at 8 o'clock on Fridays and again at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me. 8 on Fridays, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Liam Halligan. Join me every weekday at 1 p.m. for On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I've got 25 years experience covering economics and finance. We hold grown-up discussions with a host of experts who really know their stuff. We can't buy gas and store it. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
I think it was a mistake.
Even you, Liam, don't have a crystal ball.
Inflation's a real threat.
Every weekday at 1, you're On the Money.
I'm Darren McCaffrey, and join me on The Briefing Monday to Thursday at 3 p.m. You'll get your afternoon fix of all the latest political stories, debate and analysis, as well as interviews with some of the biggest names in UK politics.
It's a problem that affects the whole world, Darren.
From Westminster to Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast, if it's happening in UK politics, we've got it covered. That's The Briefing with me, Darren McCaffrey, Monday to Thursday, 3 p.m. on GB News.